This is a quotation from The Way of the Pilgrim, which helped to popularize the Jesus prayer. But I think the description of what should develop in our lives of prayer is very helpful for us to reflect on. The context is that the pilgrim has heard this passage from 1 Thessalonians 5:17 about praying without ceasing. And he says, wow, what is this praying without ceasing? And he starts to ask all of the important prayer masters what this means, praying without ceasing. Is this possible? How do you do that? What's this all about? And one response is quite helpful for us. The master responds, ceaseless interior prayer is a continuous aspiration and a yearning of the spirit of man toward God. To succeed in this sweet exercise, it is necessary to ask God frequently that He teach you to pray continuously. Pray often and fervently, and prayer itself will reveal this mystery to you, how it is possible for it to be continuous. But it takes time. A few important points for us to seize on in that are, first of all, that ceaseless interior prayer is possible and really a goal for us. Now, nobody here, including the pilgrim or anybody else, is going to stop all other activity and be in a kind of kneeling there with hands folded and focused on something, because after a day or so, you'll probably fall over. And after a couple of days, you'll die of thirst. So clearly that's not what we have in mind here by ceaseless interior prayer. But it begs the question, and it's worth reflecting on. Well, what does that mean exactly? And the description here is very nice. A continuous aspiration and a yearning of the spirit of man toward God. And so can we develop this kind of interior desire that is constant? Referencing God in everything we do. If you were here yesterday, we read that nice little quotation from Gary Goulegrange talking about turning all of our interior conversation with ourself into a conversation with God. Doing that more and more. And how do we do that? Well, by doing it some, we'll start to do it more, and by doing it more, we'll start to do it all the time. It's a developing of really a habit of interior awareness, loving attention to God's presence. And so it's something that we practice. We practice recollecting ourselves, and that's the way that we develop a habit of recollection. And that habit of recollection becomes open to a variety of graces that God can give. Another thing that we draw out of this little quotation from The Way of the Pilgrim is that, of course, and it seems almost silly to say this, but the distortions are so common. Prayer is a relationship. God is not a kind of what's the word I'm looking for? He's not just sort of this thing up there that we're aiming at, or he's not a state of consciousness that we're trying to achieve by perfecting some kind of technique. God is a person, or in fact 3 persons, and He invites us into a relationship with Him. And I'm going to come back to that. It's extremely important for us. But one of the elements of that is, if you want to pray all the time, ask God to help you pray all the time. And I find that it's a very beautiful comfort for me when I'm in prayer and spending time in a holy hour and feeling especially my own poverty and feeling like, I've been at this for 20-some years, and still I have these times that I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. What? Lord, teach me to pray. And those words of the apostles in Luke 11, chapter 1, often come to my mind, and I simply open my hands before the Lord and ask Him, teach me how to pray. Teach me to pray always. Teach me to be attentive to your love. Teach me to be more open to your grace. And simply asking Him for help does so much good for us. And then lastly, the encouragement of the master to the pilgrim, pray often and fervently, and prayer itself will reveal this mystery to you. And that often and fervently is very helpful. There's a Another line that's even more pointed from the nice British abbot John Chapman. He writes in one of his letters, "If you want to pray better, pray more. If you can't pray more, at least pray consistently. And what we can be sure of is that if you pray less, it'll get worse." It's nice British clarity, simplicity. But really, we sometimes think about, well, I wish I could. How would I ever become a better prayer? Or pray more. And this is where that relational analogy is so helpful. Not just an analogy; it is a relationship. Prayer is our relationship with God, and then we can really draw a lot of insight from the analogy of human relationships. How do you grow in human relationships? Well, you spend time. And spend focused time. Of course, married couples often come to a place that they are sort of around each other a lot, and especially when there are a lot of tasks to be done, the married couple can often grow apart from each other, so that when they're finally empty nesters, suddenly they realize that their relationship has not grown over these last, 20 or 30 years. And I think it's a danger for us as priests also to get into that kind of mode. And if I ever hear, "My work is my prayer," I might strangle that person. It's so dangerous to give ourselves that kind of rationalization. Oh, I'm doing all of this priestly ministry, I'm doing all of this priestly work, that constitutes my prayer. That marriage will not last long. Surely we bring our prayer into our work, and we bring our work into our prayer, but our relationship with God needs to be more than our work. And spending time, there's no substitute for spending time with Him. I'm a big believer in Fulton Sheen's endless antiphon of the holy hour and how important it is to make a holy hour every day, in addition to obviously celebrating the Mass and celebrating the liturgy of the hours. It's just essential for us as priests to have those extended periods of time in prayer with the Lord, just to be with Him, most fundamentally. And then how does that develop? Well, a lot of it develops on its own over time. As the Master says to the pilgrim, prayer itself will reveal the mystery to us, just like relationships. You've done enough marriage prep, and I know we have a few married people with us in the back, and probably lots of married people with us online. But if you tried to tell an engaged couple, okay, let me tell you all of the dimensions that you'll go through in your marriage relationship, how would you even begin that process? You mention a couple of them. Well, you're going to fight, figure out how to do that well. You're going to enjoy some time together, figure out how to do that well. Probably you'll have some children. You'll figure out how to do that well. You'll have some conversations. You'll share, you could list a few things, but how could you possibly elaborate all of the dimensions of a relationship that's committed and lifelong? Well, really, you need to be committed to being in it and spending time with the beloved, open to conversation, and ultimately bringing your entire humanity into that relationship. And so, to come back to it, I want to just state up front, Christian prayer, unlike Buddhist meditation or yoga or some other Zen techniques of breathing or whatever, Christian prayer is relational, and Christian prayer is also, on our side of things, is human. We bring our full humanity into our prayer. A lot of times our humanity is precisely the trouble for us. Let me read another little description. I hope that if there's one thing that Father Tom and I bring to teaching on prayer, and you would find in our book, it's trying to be as real as possible about these things. And we both do a lot of spiritual direction, so we hear a lot of real experiences. But maybe this... Oh, I'm sorry. I use these for, of course, personal prayer. It's from our book that I have referenced a couple of times. Thanks for asking. Sorry about that. I went to prayer, but nothing happened. I just sat there. After a little while, I started to feel uncomfortable. I wasn't sure what to say. To be honest, I wasn't sure if anyone was listening anyway. I tried to talk to God, but I just heard the echo of my own thoughts. Then some random stuff started to fill my head. I remembered some past experiences. I got a little upset. I got out my rosary to keep myself busy. But as I started through the prayers, I got distracted by somebody who walked out of the chapel. And then I was alone. And I felt really alone. I started to get bored. My eyes began to close. I started nodding off. Then suddenly I woke up, and I got really irritated. This is useless, I thought. I'll never be able to pray. So I got up and left. Now, most people in giving this kind of description would summarize that their prayer is not very good. I would contest that, up to the point of getting up and leaving at least. What's happening in prayer is this person is bringing their humanity. And I would say if there's one thing that I would counsel this person in prayer, it's instead of trying to stuff that humanity, which is sort of falling asleep and getting distracted and getting upset and feeling bored, instead of trying to stuff that or put it somewhere or overcome it in order to achieve what exactly, just bring it before the Lord. Show it to Him. Tell Him, I'm bored. I don't know what to do. I'm upset. I am falling asleep. When you fall asleep and wake up, look at Him and know that He's been holding you while you fell asleep, as St. Therese expressed it so beautifully. God doesn't love a child, His little child who is sleeping, any less than He loves her when she's awake. And maybe more. Sometimes we'd be better off asleep, and God wouldn't have to be so bothered with us. But bringing our humanity into our prayer is so essential. A lot of times we have this idea that we're supposed to pray like angels, that we're supposed to be free of all distractions and enwrapped in this kind of perfect focus, and that everything that falls short of that is a sign that we're really immature in our prayer lives. But the reality is that we're human, and God made us human. If He wanted us to pray like angels, He would have made us angels. But He made us human beings, and so we bear the burdens of our humanity, the weight of our emotions and our limitations and our tiredness and our hungry stomachs and our busy schedules and all of these things. And simply sharing them with Him is how relationships grow. So learning to turn ourselves inside out enough to be vulnerable with Him and to be honest with Him is part of what moves us toward a deeper life of prayer, a deeper intimacy with the Lord.